email version to me, which may or may not bounce, because my Lotus Notes may be at capacity. So now you can do it online. You submit a very simple application. It's not a full 40-page business plan. It's a 2-page, the equivalent of a 2-page Word document that you will submit, and you have to do it before 11:59 p.m. on March 15th. Now, if every single one of you waits until 11:59 p.m., the system will crash. I'm not kidding. So try not to wait till the last minute, okay? Try, because everybody else is going to be doing the same thing. So you don't want to have any technical glitches. So you're going to hit that. You do have to sign into the system. It's a very simple process. You're just going to have to create an account. You can always reset your password. It's not anything, top secret. It's not the NSA or anything like that. It's pretty easy. You're just going to have to get an account and submit your application. And then I will go in and promote you. Once the applications are approved by the committee, we'll promote you to the next step, which would be to submit your slides. And your slides for the competition will be due on April 8th, my oldest son's birthday, okay? And then the competition is on tax day. These are how I remember all these dates. Now you can watch past presentations of first place winners at the New York State competition right here by clicking this button. This will take you into the YouTube channel, and you will see they may not be that greatly produced. It's a lot better when you see it live, but you will get a sense of what it's like to compete at the state level, which is very similar to competing at the regional level. The regional level is the first step. You're going to compete at the regional level for the right to compete at the state level, where you can win lots of money. And then the first thing you should really do is download the rule book. And the rule book has all the information you need about the competition. It tells you, it explains everything. It tells you all about the categories. It explains the eligibility requirements. It explains everything. It's a pretty simple thing. Just go in there and take a look at it. And that's probably the first thing you should do. And it even explains the kind of things that you need to present. But our speaker is going to talk about that today. So you guys have the advantage being here. You're going to get the inside scoop. And I'll explain that in a minute. You can also go into the info session area, and you will see some slides from the information session we held in October. Unfortunately, we don't have the video for that, but we do have the slides, and that gives you a lot of good information about the competition. Okay, and we have last year's video, which was the information session from last year. So I think there's plenty of information up there that will be of great use to you all. Just a little housekeeping note for those of you who are not from Marist, those are our external visitors who we're thrilled to have here. The restrooms are all on that side of the building. We often see, my office is on that side of the building, and I see people wandering all the time looking for the bathroom on that side of the building. I have to tell them over and over, there's no bathroom on that side of the building. So the restrooms are right here on every floor. There's a men's room and a ladies' room right around the corner, and that's where they are. So that's important information. So I would like to introduce our speaker. Let me bring up his slides. We're very thrilled to have the speaker join us today to talk about how you think like an investor. I keep saying it's how you wow the judges. It's the same thing. But we are very thrilled to have our speaker, Les Newman, who's the CEO of ICANN Global and ICANN New York. And it is a 501c3 not-for-profit clean tech and energy incubator that has served the greater Hudson Valley since 2005. He's been a serial entrepreneur since the 70s, although he's a very young man. He started at the age of 8. Involved in the digital print industry, electronic scent and cosmetic application, virtual reality, and software and hardware development. Les has also been a judge at the New York State Business Plan Competition since its very inception, since the beginning. So he has seen it all, and he's heard it all, and he knows the deal. He's also agreed, and I hope you didn't forget this, but he's also agreed to be a judge at our regional competition this year. So we are very excited about that. So he's got lots of great advice, lots of great information. He has consulted with startups of all kinds for many, many years. He's a great expert. He is also on I'm the assistant dean for the School of Computer Science and Mathematics here at Marist, and Les is on our advisory board. So he's also very good at giving advice to academics, okay, so not just startups. So we are thrilled to welcome Les today to come and talk about how you think like an investor. So please give him a warm welcome.
had less people during the first year of the New York State Businessman competition that are in the room. So to give you an example of how this has grown and developed, it's great to see everybody here. I look forward to your questions and your enthusiasm and what you're coming up with, because it's really a pretty neat deal. So the only ground rules that I give my cohorts in the back over there, if you're going to throw stuff, nothing sharp.
I have peanuts.
Nothing. Peanuts good, nothing sharp. So let's get started. You know, a little bit about me. Susan gave you a little indication who I am, what I do. In addition to startups, I've been involved in several other competitions and being a panelist on several boards and competitions and different kinds of things. Some of these things that you should get to know or look up, how companies present, what they're presenting, how they're presenting, who is presenting, and we'll get into some of those topics. But to get an idea of the level of enthusiasm that I want you to come away with when you're up there. So, you know, yeah, well, we've all seen that. We can everything out. Okay. So over the past 10 years, I've seen just about everything when it comes to entrepreneurs. From the guy that walked into my office, and this is God's honest truth, handed me a piece of paper, and he said, "This is my business plan," piece of loose leaf paper. And it was written in ink that will disappear in 30 minutes. So that way, we don't need a non-disclosure agreement, it will disappear. Cool, you know. So we've seen companies that are looking for all types of investment, from $50,000 up to several $1 million. Some of our companies have had backing, some of them have had no backing, some of them have friends and families, they've mortgaged their houses, they've mortgaged the ranch, and others have walked in with, here's my guy, and he's going to invest $10 million in our company. That doesn't happen every day. So how do you, as budding entrepreneurs, pitch to investors? Well, the first thing you have to do is to think like an investor. We had a discussion earlier today about angel investors. And I have my own little theory about angel investors, and a lot of people you'll be presenting to are angel venture capital investors, private equity, etc. They get very wrapped up in what you do. They are themselves entrepreneurs. Anybody that invests into an early stage company is as much of an entrepreneur as you are, and in some cases, even more, because they've got more at stake. They've got real capital. You've got something called sweat equity, which is worth about that much. So you got to learn to think like an investor. So what are investors interested in? Well, at the end of the day, it's really only 5 things. How much money do you need? And we use the 2.5 to 1 rule. You need 2.5 times more money. It's going to take 2.5 more times, and that's just the standard rule. So whatever you do, know you're going to need more. The other thing he wants to know is, what are you going to do with my money? That means you need to use some proceeds. You need to show what you're going to spend money on. One thing, always a question that comes up is, where do I put my salary? We'll get to that in a minute, but that's always a question that comes up. The investors want to know, are you the right team? Are you the right person who I'm going to give my money to, who can execute on the plan that you've shown me? I'll tell you something, about 90% of the time, you're not the right team. You may be a founder, but you may not end up in the same position. So keep that in mind. Are you coachable? The other thing I want to know is, when do I get my money back? So we're going to go over hockey stick projections and things like that, which is normal, but they want to know when they get their money back. And lastly, how much do I get? When am I going to make a lot of money? So you're going to have to understand that stuff and be able to tell them exactly what you're going to do. So keeping those concepts in mind, what do you need to show that's going to make them throw money at you, or in this case, advance you to the next round in this competition? You've got to keep in mind, there you go, that you will have very strong competition. I'm sure you guys are all bright bulbs, but there are bright bulbs meeting in meetings like this all over the state. That's your competition. And they're out there. And the further you go in this competition, the stronger the competition gets. So you got to be concise, you got to be realistic. The investors have to believe in you. And that passion has to come across. Don't be wishy-washy. Please don't be wishy-washy. Even if you're making it up, it's okay. So investors want to know, what is your idea or concept? Be concise, be straightforward, get to the point. Will it be disruptive? Do you know who your customer is? In other words, who's going to buy your product? Who's going to license your product? Know it. Know who your competition is, know who your customer is, know who you're selling to. How does it scale? What does that mean? Does anybody know what scaling means? Somebody raise a hand.
Well, the new pulse means going up the gunks.
Well, it's pretty much going up the guts. In this case, scaling means, is your business going to grow to be a $100 million business? How does it scale? How does it get from here to here? To be real clear, today's angel investors, venture capitalists, private equity, hedge funds, foundations, they're not really interested in a business that's going to do $2, $3, $5 million. It doesn't almost pay for them to invest. They like to see scalability up to a certain level. Maybe it's 20 million, maybe it's 100 million. Tony, would you agree with that? So scaling your business to that level is very important to an investor. If it's not scalable, don't BS them. If it's just what it is, it's okay. That's why you're going to these people for help, for advice, yeah, for capital, but you gotta be clear. Don't BS. Another thing you want to do is, what's going to prevent somebody else from duplicating what you do? Whether it be intellectual property, whether it be trademarks, copyrights, what's going to prevent somebody from doing what you've done or want to do? It's critical. So I'm sure all of your advisors have given you the traditional 10-point PowerPoint pitch, because you're only going to have, what, 6 minutes?
10 minutes.
7 minutes?
10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes. You know, when we started, it was 6. So you get a whole 40% more. It's good. So these are kind of the things that you have to cover in your slides. This is like writing a book. You got to tell your story. But given that you have 10 minutes, be real clear on what your story is. Everyone has a style. You have a style. Show your style. Show what you're made of. Show who you really are. And your pitch will come across more sincere. And that's really important. So don't bore anybody, but get to the point. You got to stand out and be memorable. Well, how do you do that? So let's go through a little bit of the 10-point program and kind of go through where we are. The first thing you need to discuss is, what problem are you solving? What's the market opportunity that you have that makes you investable? the solution. Okay, you've identified the problem. What is your solution? And what's the secret sauce behind your solution? What's the magic? What do you bring to the table? What's your business model? Business models are something you need to adhere to. It's like a plan. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to introduce it. This is how we're going to test it. This is how we're going to develop it. This is how we're going to sell it, market it. What is your model? It's like a business plan. I'm not a strong believer in big-time business plans, but it is how you're going to do business. Most importantly, who is your competition? I'll give you a perfect example. We're working with an early stage company right now, and we're getting pretty far along in the process. And we made some assumptions that the company had done some searches on what potentially could be a competitor. Turns out they own the patents on what this company wants to present. That's a problem. How are we going to do this? A number of years ago, we had a company that we were interviewing, and they came all the way from Arkansas and to present a biodiesel type of conversion. And we had a room full of advisors. He got up in front of the room, big guy, and he brought 2 other PhDs with him. And his business plan, no joke, was this thick. You could keep a door open. And he started giving his plan, and one of our guys stood up and says, "Wait a minute, stop." He said, "Have you ever heard of this company?" He held up his little note. He says, "No." He says, "Well, they hold a patent on everything you just told me you were going to do." He didn't even know who they were. And he says, "Do you know this company?" Now the sweat is really pouring out of the guy. He's leaking like a sieve. Nope. Well, whatever patents they don't have, they do. How are you going to do this? Don't know. You got to know who your competition is. You got to know what is your competitive advantages, and if you're stepping on anybody else's intellectual property, before you do that, well, your business is going to get sued, and you're not going to be in business. What's your go-to-market and sales strategy? How are you going to sell this? Just saying we're going to do social media is not enough. How? What? What's your strategy? How are you going to sell it? What are your price points? Are there discounts? You got to tell them. How are you going to do this? It's very tough to get into a 10-minute presentation, but you can do this. Your financials and your metrics. We have seen slides with spreadsheets that will make your eyes water. Okay? And you want to take a butter knife and just stick it right in there. Don't do it. Don't do it. Keep it simple. Okay? We need this much money. We're going to do convertible notes. We're going to do whatever it might be. And we're going to limit it to this much. And here's our use of proceeds. And that's what we're going to do. Keep it simple. And I think I may have an example of one in this presentation. Keep it simple. You don't need a 5-year sheet that in a 10-minute presentation, no one's going to read. If they want more information about your company, tell them, come see me afterwards, and we'd be happy to explain the details. And you'll have the details. You'll know the details. But not in this presentation. Brief, concise, here's our growth, here's what we're going to do, here's our projected sales. Great. Do it. Most importantly, and I say that in all honesty, when we look at a company, it is not the product we look at first. It's the management team. Are you able to execute? Can you do it? Again, I told you, most people, they think they can. They can't. Now you guys, by and large, there's some of us that have a little bit of gray hair, or in some cases none at all, who have the experience and have been there and kind of done that. You guys haven't been there and done it. So it's important that on your management team, you show your experience. Who's there to help you? Maybe it's an academic advisor. maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's somebody's dad, whatever it might be, a potential investor, a competitor. Strengthen your management team. Don't be afraid to give up something, okay? 100% of nothing isn't worth a whole lot. So that becomes really important. What are the risks? How to mitigate the risks? So I'm asking for $1 million. Knowing the rule of 2.5, I know you're going to need $2.5 million. Well, that means more risk for the investor, more time, a greater payback period. The IRR is going to be strung out a little bit. How are you going to mitigate that? How are you going to do this where the investor is comfortable in your plan, and how you're going to develop it? And then, what are the next steps? So, in other words, where are you today? If it's, well, I was sleeping last night, had this great concept for a company, okay, that's fine. If you've developed it on paper, if there's a prototype, if there's a sample on your website, fine. That's where you are, that's where you are. No problem with that. Just tell them. And where are we next? And what's it going to take to get to that next step? Yeah, the key word here is opportunity. For you, you're giving them an opportunity. For them, not such an opportunity yet. You haven't done anything. So, what is the opportunity? Remember the enthusiasm, the passion that you have to display. You have to make them believe in you, and you're investing in you. They're not investing in the product. They're investing in you. So, let's move on. Now, remember when I said that you don't need a whole big pro forma that's going to take forever. This is something that I like to do, okay? And when I look at my companies and how we do this, it's clear, it's concise, it gets to the point, gets it in, gets it out. Who's the company? What do you do? Who's your customer? What's the size of the market? What are the benefits that you bring to the table? Who's on your team? How much are you looking for? When are you going to do it? And how are you going to fund it? It's clear, it's concise. You don't have to use this exact format. Come up with something that works for you. But it gets to the point. I usually do this on slide number 2, right? Slide number 1 is your logo or whatever. I bring this up right away. You can always come back and reinforce all of these points. If anybody has any questions, just yell. We can start, because I don't want you to gloss over stuff.
Unless you have.
Yes, ma'am.
Slides or?
$1.
First slide, first student, because we want to know if it's scalable.
It's scalable. Absolutely scalable.
Well, you can send me, Les, you can send them to me, and anybody who wants them can send me a note. And also, again, we'll have this up on the website.
I'm going to get a lot of dollars. This is good. I'm going to license it to Susan. Great. So this is slide number 1. Now, getting into the financials, I'm going to tell you right now, if this is in your use of proceeds, no. Okay?
That's the delivery van?
That's the delivery vehicle, right?
What if it were an MG instead?
Maybe. We can make a deal there. Okay? We had a guy, and again, in all seriousness, he was looking for about $250,000. He had a software development thing that he wanted to do. And my office was on the ground floor, because I could see everyone was coming and going. Guy drove up in a brand new Porsche, right? And he's looking for money. I said, are you kidding me? What do you need money for? He says, well, I'm kind of tapped out. I said, sell a piece of crap in the parking lot. Oh, I can't do that. My father gave it to me. I said, well, that tells me your dad's got a little bit of dough. All right? then no, this isn't gonna work. So you need to show your business plan. Your business plan is how you're gonna demonstrate, how you're gonna make money. Keep it simple, concise, keep your use of proceeds very tight. Operations, R&D, other development, marketing, keep it simple. Don't get into these big spreadsheets that no one wants to read. Nobody can. Well, this is a question that always comes up. How do I value my company? Everyone wants to know, what's your valuation? Well, frankly, I would say 99% of people in this room, you don't have a valuation. Okay? You have an idea, you have a concept, you have a dream. There's no value. Okay? So an investor is, again, what are they investing in? What are they investing in? You. Okay? How much you looking for? As much as you can get. So keep it simple, but you have to know what the terms that investors speak in. It was funny, Alan and I were in Starbucks before, and I'm watching the baristas behind the counter. They're speaking a language, never heard of this before. It's a whole different language. Well, this is the language of investors. You have to know what EBITDA is. Anybody know what it is? Very good. Anybody know what a convertible note is? Silence. That's when somebody lends you money, and the note that you give them can convert into equity at a certain time and place. Does anybody know what equity is? What's equity?
Equity, it's like, it could be like shares.
Very good. Absolutely. Okay, it's your company. It's what you want them to buy. Remember what you're selling them. You're selling them equity shares in your company. That's what you're selling them. There are all kinds of equities, preferred stock, there's options. Anybody know what IPO stands for? Well, that we know. Okay. And then there's margins. So you got to know what's the margin, what's the profit margin on your product? What's an acceptable margin in the industry that you're in? Does anybody know what the margins are at Whole Foods?
37%.
How much?
37%, and we're talking about per item or at the end?
At the end.
1%.
Very good. Absolutely right. 1%. If Whole Foods were to be giving a presentation tomorrow, telling investors, we're going to start up this big food chain, and we're going to get a 1% profit margin, would anybody have invested? Okay? So, know your industry, know the people in your industry, and not that you have to mimic them, but if your margins are higher, why? Maybe it's your manufacturing process, maybe it's the way you develop stuff, maybe it's your platform, maybe it's your sales methodology. Tell them why. If your margins are lower, but we're going to make it up in volume. Okay.
Realize Airbus loses money on every airplane, but they make it up in volume.
Absolutely right. They're also state sponsored, so that becomes problematic. So here's a couple of interesting little tidbits. When an entrepreneur presents and an investor thinks, okay? When an entrepreneur presents a plan or a forecast, the investor thinks, what are the actual results going to be? How are we going to get traction on this? When an entrepreneur says, we're going to have hockey stick growth, yeah, okay. That ain't gonna happen. When an entrepreneur has, we have a cutting edge invention, it's never been done and we have no competition. Okay, the investor thinks a little bit differently. It's a giant killing idea. Yeah, you're gonna get crushed by the giants. We have focused experts. We have academics. Must be
Hey.
an academic.
It's not funny.
I knew I'd get it wrong. Academics are great. They just don't know about business. It's good.
You know enough to stay away from it.
A new idea means you need detailed execution, promised milestones. The investor says, no, you're going to under-deliver. It'll never happen. Okay, now, needed resources. How much money do you need? You're going to overspend. We just know it. That's the 2.5 times rule. And the sky is the limit. So, investors think a little bit differently than you might. But at the end of the day, it comes back to the rewards, and for the reward, the investor that you're asking for has to take the greatest risk. As I said before, it's worth saying, in a lot of cases, the investor has more risk in your company than you do. So you're playing with their money. You're playing on their time. So now let's get a little bit about your presentation. Who should present? Well, a lot of times you get, what, 2, 3, 4, 5 members on your team. It isn't always the guy that's the president or the CEO that's going to present. It's the best presenter that should present. You should critique each other. You should make each of your team members do the presentation, and then collectively decide who's going to do it. You got to make eye contact. Now, for your presentation, the judges are going to be sitting right in the front row. Okay? So it'll be easier to make eye contact. Make eye contact. That means you have to know the presentation. You got to rehearse it, rehearse it, rehearse it. You got to go through it and through it and through it. We mentioned enthusiasm and passion. Can't tell you how important it is. If you're wishy-washy and you shake hands like this, you're not going to get it, kids. You gotta really be behind. If you believe in it, if you don't believe in it, then probably you shouldn't be presenting and you shouldn't be in the competition. Because there are people that do believe in what they're doing. Have your team in place. Now, if you're going to be the presenter, when you start, have your team members off to the side, standing there nicely dressed, by the way. If you want to wear a suit and a tie, or a suit or a dress, great. Please don't wear stupid jeans and polos. Okay? That's not going to endear anybody that you know what the heck you're doing. So dress appropriately. You don't need a tuxedo, but dress appropriately. And now, identify who your team members are. This one's the CTO, he's going to do finance, he's going to do R&D, she's going to do this, and she's going to do that. Identify them, and that's great. Just keep them there. Because after that, you get the Q&A. So now you get a chance to be the CEO, and what does that mean? You get to delegate. So when questions come up about a specific topic, finance, Brian's going to answer my finance question. You got a team about marketing? Sheila's going to answer my marketing question. And let them participate. Let them get involved and show to the investors that you have the right team to pull this off. And if somebody's asked you a question and you don't know, say, I don't know. I'll get back to you on that. It's okay. Remember, no BS. It's not going to help you. So, you know, this is a big competition. It's statewide. A lot of smart guys around all over the state. It's really pretty slick, and I think you're going to be impressed. How many of you are doing this for the first time? The majority of them. And I think you're going to enjoy the atmosphere. You're going to enjoy the competition. You're going to enjoy the camaraderie. And sometimes you'll even find people that are doing things that are similar to what you're doing, and there's a nice collaborative spirit that goes on. this is exactly the time in your life to be doing this and experimenting and learning this process. So do it, enjoy it, go for it, come home with a trophy, or come home with a pat on the back. It doesn't matter. The fact that you're doing it is what really counts. So, questions. Let's open it up. I'm sure you got questions. Somebody ask a stupid question. Then you're all ready for the competition. Susan, they're all ready.
You're all ready?
They're done.
Get them up there, present, let's go.
Sure. Somebody want to come up?
Where we have-
Sir,
How many teams generally compete?
how many teams compete?
Yeah, in general, on the regional level.
I'm gonna come up too.
I
Let me tell you.
We're 33 last year.
Good. See, I delegate. You can bring up Susan, she knows everything there is to know.
So, at the regional level, the first year, remember this is year 4 that we're coming into. So year 1, we were brand new at this. We had 4 schools and 16 teams. And this is across 6 categories, because you compete in a category. The categories, by the way, are IT software, biomedical healthcare, energy sustainability, social nonprofit, products and services, or advanced technology, or nanotechnology. Those 2 are together. So there are 6 categories that you're competing in. So those 16 teams were across 5 of those categories, or maybe we only had 4 categories that year, because we don't always have representation in nano. Usually that's the capital district that rules that category. So that's how it works. Now, year 2, we had 30 teams from 6 schools, and then last year we had 33 teams from 10 schools. So this year, I'm hoping to get those 48 again, that will all participate from 15 schools. That would be great. So, and that's again across 6 categories potentially. And I would think if we had like 3D printing from New Paltz, like advanced 3D print, that would fit under advanced
That was
technology.
last year.
Yeah, that was the
Seriously,
old.
honest.
All right, whatever. But if you have some advanced technology, bring it in. I would count on New Paltz. So that answer your question? Then at the state level, because there's 10 regions, and the 10 regions are sending the top 2 teams from each category, you could potentially have 120 teams?
We had 120 teams.
Yeah.
Wow. Divided up into 6 competitions.
Yes.
You have to have a working prototype.
No.
No.
You can have, like Les was saying, you could have slept last night, had this brilliant dream, and it's a great idea, and now, of course, you have to do a little research around it, but it could be an idea.
But you had all night.
If you have one, though, what would be an appropriate way of integrating it incorporating it into the presentation? Or
Yeah,
would
if
you
you have
suggest
website?
incorporating it?
Pictures,
into-
pictures, pictures. If you
And
say
people
you
have brought things. People actually bring things.
Yeah, they bring stuff, especially the food category.
Yes, yes, culinary,
Yeah.
culinary, we had, cupcakes.
I want to change my group that I'm joining.
I think it's important to understand, you only have 10 minutes, and we're pretty strict on the time. So if you bring a prototype that you want to demonstrate, and that cuts into your other items that you have to talk about, and you should try to cover all the items that are asked for in the business plan presentation. You've got to weigh how much you want to do with show and tell versus getting through the rest of your presentation. Because the judges want to hear all of it.
And if it's on your phone, and it's an app, it's gonna be hard to show your phone around. It's difficult. So take some pictures, put images on the screen. That's really a good way to do it, and that's absolutely right. Sir,
A lot of these people are younger than you.
really?
And one of the things that I find at the beginning of our exercise, that maybe you can shed some light on, is how do you come up with ideas?
Never had that problem.
Yeah.
You know, interestingly enough, when we started our incubator, we started off in Kingston area. And Kingston at one point had a huge IBM presence. And we found that the majority of people that were coming in were not what we'll call academic entrepreneurs. They were what we'll call business entrepreneurs. There's a difference. Academic entrepreneurs, you work on a project in school, or you have papers to write and research to do, and ideas come out of the research. But there's the other parts that can say, hey, I can take this and make it better. Or I can do something new with this, building off an established platform. ideas are everywhere.
Or something frustrates you tremendously and you say, how can I do this? How can we solve this so it's not just driving me crazy every day? You come up with some solution. Velcro. Yeah.
I have just a question on procedure during it. And you mentioned some things like don't BS, you know, if you don't have an answer, don't try to make it up, they're going to see through it. My question for my students was, what happens, okay, you develop this idea, and I like the way to think about it when coming up with ideas is empathy for the consumer. So you have empathy for the consumer, you make this product, and you're a product expert, you know it backwards and forwards, you know the finances involved, and you're up there, and you get advice from a judge. And they say, well, why don't you paint it red? You know what I mean? And that would, you know.
Because we found that blue, over the course of our research, our demographic said blue was what people gravitated to. Don't be afraid to confront. Be authoritative. You are the expert. And that's what people want to hear.
Thank you.
You had a question?
No, I was going to say on the ideas thing, journal, like if you've got a week to come up with your idea to give you enough time to develop your business plan and all that, spend 30 minutes first thing in the morning, last thing at night, just writing things down towards see what's that painful problem, or what are those things that I'm most passionate about. You know, what is that why thing that I've always been dreaming about? Write it down, even if it's nonsense. Spend 20, 30 minutes writing things down for 5 days in a row. You're going to have an idea.
Ideas are all around. They're everywhere. You should have no shortage at your age of ideas. Even at my age.
How do students go about finding out who their competition is if they're doing something that's unique or different or whatever? How do they research their competitors?
Google's a good place to start.
Well,
Do web research.
actually, we also have available to
Oh, funny you should
everyone.
ask.
Funny you should ask. So on our website, under the info session page, we have a business plan resource pathfinder, which was set up by our lovely librarian, Katie Silberger. And there are a lot of industry information, market information, so you can do some research right here on the website. There's some resources available to you. And Katie, right here, has her email and phone number. She is happy to help. If you tell her it's about the business plan competition, even if you're not a Marist student, you're a student from another institution, it's regarding the business plan competition, she'll help.
This is a public site.
This is public, yes.
But do the deep dive. Get down into the weeds. Understand your industry. Because if you're going to get questions on financial questions or marketing questions, you need to know the answers.
Susan, the competitors don't know what the other teams in this year's competition are presenting, correct?
No.
I think that was
So
partially the question.
right, to clarify, the definition of competition is your marketplace competition, often called the landscape. You need to really understand, as Les was saying, the industry that you think you're solving the problem in. So that's the competition that you need to understand. If the people next to you in design are doing dresses and you're doing shirts, you know, that's not what you need to worry about.
Right.
You need to worry about the dress industry.
And what's interesting, last year we had, I think, didn't we have like 3 teams with foot inserts? And each one was very different. So even though they were really pitching a similar product, their take on it was very, very different. So, they were competing in a way, but really not really. They were really quite different. So, but yeah, the competition that you're really concerned about is out there, existing businesses. What's going on out there? Out there, not out there.
Anybody else? We're all, go ahead.
Just real quick, is there like anything that would make you like ineligible?
Yes. Now there is a rule book, as I said, that you can upload. Where am I? So when you go on the home page, you'll see the rule book, and that will explain it. But briefly, I will tell you, you have to be pitching a venture that is 100% student owned. So if your Uncle Joe has a business that you're involved in, and Uncle Joe is a part owner in the business, and Uncle Joe is not a student here in New York State, then you can't participate. It has to be a student-owned venture. You have to come in with either a staff or faculty advisor, and sometimes academics do know a lot about business.
Yeah.
So you have to come in with an advisor from your school. And again, it's teams of 1 to 6. So if you have 12 people, only 6 can participate in the competition. You cannot have 12 people up there participating. You can only participate in 1 team at a time, yeah.
To use your example, Uncle Joe could enroll in one credit course in some community college, and then we're good.
Well, we had Broome, do you remember Broome County Community College?
Absolutely.
So in
Remember
Broome,
Harvard guys 2 years ago?
yes, and Broome County Community College, the guy was old enough to be my father, which is really, you know, and he was enrolled as a student because he had a business that he wanted to pitch, and he won in 2nd place, by the way.
How long did you part of the idea?
I'm sorry?
How long did you part of the idea? Like you and the other person came up, but the
That's
other
fine.
person is not.
It's a
Of
company,
course,
right?
yeah.
It's now your venture.
But getting back to eligibility also, you cannot have already raised more than $100,000. Now the school can, let's say you're in an incubator inside your school and it's a research situation and your school has received a grant for $2.5 million. And you know, they've received the money and that's helping you develop your idea. That's okay. It's if you as a company cannot have raised more than $100,000.
But on the other end of the spectrum, it doesn't need to be a going concern yet.
No.
It can be just a concept.
Concept is fine.
Yeah.
But also know that there are teams, I don't know at this level, but in the finals level, there are teams that do this for a living. Okay? This is
Yes,
how-
that's that group from that guy from Columbia. He was
This is
from.
how they do it. They go from business plan competition to competition to competition to competition. They'll win 50,000 here, 100,000 there, 10,000 there. That's how they keep.
But the
their
judges
company.
seem to see through that though. So
They
you
didn't
say
at
that you-
first. They
Yeah,
do
they seem
now.
to get annoyed at that, so.
Very annoying. It's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So in the past, you didn't even have to be a current student this semester as long as you were a student in the fall?
Yes, as long as you were, yes, that's still the case. As long as you were a student in the 2015 to 2016 academic year. So if you graduated in December, you're still eligible. And of course, the culinary has unusual schedules, but as long as you were a student in the 2015 to 2016 academic year. We want the culinary to bring cupcakes and beer. Beer would be
Brownies.
Brownies good, beer, rum is great.
And I can tell you, you know, like we talk about prototypes, you talk about, when you talk about dress, there was one team at the New York State competition in products and services, I didn't see them, but they were wearing those rainbow colored hats with the pinwheels spinning around and they were all wearing this, so you can, sometimes,
That's fine.
sometimes the costume is okay.
The West Point cadets wear a uniform, by the way.
What?
The West Point cadets wear a uniform.
Yes,
do.
yes, now the West Point, is anybody from West Point here? Because somebody from West Point was supposed to come, but they didn't. West Point competes, and they dress really nice, so remember that.
And the judges all stand up when they come into the room.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments?